This week, what are the biggest challenges facing Canadians in 2020? Also, what are your expectations of the parties in a minority parliament? I'm Glenn McGuinness, and this is Outburst.
There's a lot of elements that I think there's a lot of common ground on, and I think that's where people need to be focusing.
I'd like to actually see them get something done. I find that they often just stall out and nothing happens for long periods of time.
Yeah, that they'll work together, that they'll actually try and work together. It's called, the loyal opposition for a reason.
My expectation is that they work together. Historically, we haven't had minority governments that have lasted longer for 2 years. So let's break that history.
January 27th marks the expected return of MPs to Ottawa and to West Block. Following a brief sitting in December after the October election, our federally elected officials, many who are new to the job, will begin the task of resuming Parliament. But the scene is different now. The Liberals have been reduced to a minority government and will need to work with opposing parties in order to get significant legislation passed. So, what progress would you like to see? Our question. What are your expectations of the parties in a minority parliament?
I mean, obviously, whenever you have a minority government, you have to have compromise. And I just hope they can do that.
My expectation is that they work together. Historically, we haven't had minority governments that have lasted longer for 2 years. So let's break that history. Let's get a minority government that's working together, not against each other, and remove the ideology. We're all in this for Canadians. Let's remember that first and foremost.
I mean, I've got pretty big expectations, but I think there's things that maybe haven't been focused in the last term that we should focus on. Such as, the housing crisis is a huge one, I think, and Aboriginal affairs too. We need to really step up that as well. I think those are the two big ones, in my opinion.
We tend to do well with minority governments. We, the voter, I don't know about the parties, but we tend to do fairly well. I'd like to see several parliaments consecutively of minority governments or even coalition governments.
I hope that they stay strong and say their piece and that they're heard and that they're part of the process.
I like the fact that we have the NDP there who can support Liberals with great ideas, but can also be a bit of a voice of reason and stop things that maybe aren't so smart. Like when I think about the pipeline purchase that the Liberal government made, I wish that there was a minority government in there who were able to maybe stop that decision from happening.
I'd like to actually see them get something done. I find that they often just stall out and nothing happens for long periods of time. So hopefully people can actually get along long enough to get something done.
Yeah, that they'll work together, that they'll actually try and work together. It's called, the loyal opposition for a reason. And that will listen to the opinions of people that differ from us and not vilify them and not castigate them and completely other them, but that we will work together. And I would love to see that from Parliament. I would love to see that from Parliament. We can actually work together and be a place in the world where you can see people from opposite sides actually doing something together. That would be something that would be newsworthy for me.
There might be an election sooner than we'd like. It'd be nice if they could sort of play nice for the next 3-4 years and work something out and do well, because it's happened in the past with minority governments. Just as everybody digs in their heels so much now, they don't try to meet in midway like they used to. Like the Liberals and the NDP, they did a pretty good job back in the 70s.
I expect conversation. I expect that people are going to be open to listening and really hearing each other. We're the losers as the public. We can lose when we have bickering and not a lot of time to meet the concerns of the public. And so I really feel that they can do a good job and they can really try to push maybe some agendas that wouldn't normally be addressed because you have such a diverse viewpoints that are at that table. So I think minority governments can be very successful, and following it over the last number of years, we could have actually a lot of action on many, many issues.
I just feel like it's more representative of Canadians if they're able to work together as a minority government. And I just feel like that'd be much, it gives a broader perspective and kind of maybe hopefully kind of unites the country a little bit better.
Yeah, he's got the support of the NDP on certain things. He's got the Conservatives for the pipeline. So, I mean, they've got the luxury of being able to pick and choose the party they need on the topic, and probably get support for it. I'm a little concerned that a lot of their policies are extremely costly, and the NDPs are as well, and the Greens. So I think it's going to be another huge 4 years of deficits, even bigger than they have forecast, which that worries me.
I think the expectation is to find the common ground where people can work together on. I mean, you can spend and waste 4 years just fighting over the things you don't agree on, but there's a lot of elements that I think there's a lot of common ground on, and I think that's where people need to be focusing.
If the minority parliament is going to last, they can't last just on their votes alone. They need other parties to cooperate.
For the long run, I'm expecting at some point a disagreement on the budget, and I think that leads to a non-confidence vote.
Well, I expect the Liberals will make concessions where they need to in order to be in a minority government, and I expect that the Bloc will, as the leading minority contender, will get what they can, will push for what they can, and the NDP will go for what they feel they can, and push as much as they can to get what they feel is important. And the Conservatives, well, they're wait till they get a new leader, I think.
Wheedle their way to two opposing teams. The very weakest are going to strategically work their way to make a difference.
If you look at the elections throughout the world, nobody's winning the majority government. Okay, not only in Canada. Just look around the world. So then the problem is, you look at the countries who had the minority governments for like in the last century, there are too many problems. Because always there's a division, there's chaos, and so we will have the same effect of the minority government, and that's it.
I think a party in a minority situation like that is probably more willing to make compromises to advance their policy issues. So I see a lot more cooperation, at least in the short term, till things get really untenable, and then who knows what will happen.
The wheels are in motion to replace Andrew Scheer as leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, and June 27th has been chosen as the date for party members to vote for a new leader. It could be considered the beginning of a new era where social conservatives can finally turn the page. But it's early days, and the list of contenders will prove to be tough competition. We sent our cameras out with this question. Will you be paying attention to the Conservative Party leadership race?
What I want to see is who can lead the party into coming up with a good platform that will turn Canada into what we need, help with the poverty, help with all the problems Canada's facing, help grow Canada, make it do what it needs to do.
A little bit, yeah.
And why is that?
Well, one of the major parties in Canada, and I wouldn't want to see them form the government again. They caused a lot of damage when Harper was the leader, so I'm interested in who becomes the leader.
Yes, I mean, I always pay attention to all the political parties. It's just a matter of who aligns more with my views, I could say.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see what's going to happen. They have to do something. The format has to change a little bit. Who they're looking at, I don't know. I even heard our premier was looking at something in the federal government. So they've got to have someone who's dynamic, who is of age, where doesn't matter your religion, your race, your color, your gender, your sexual identity. We have to come up to date, and our young millennials want that. And I think they have to find someone who's dynamic to do that and represent all of Canada, not just Western Canada, but all of Canada. And with any political party, they have to start to look at it instead of regionally, instead of a country. And I think our premiers have been doing a little bit more of that. So maybe the federal government can come online, but they need a dynamic leader in the Conservative Party.
Conservatism is not my way of thinking, especially now. Because of the previous Reform Party, I didn't believe in their philosophies, and they've integrated now into the conservative beliefs, is what I think.
Well, it's a time of change. Any political race is a horse race. They're interesting just for that reason alone. And I think the Conservatives have an opportunity, maybe, with the Liberals seeming to find ways to stumble. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Just I enjoy watching news. I'm all over the map with my affiliation, but yeah, absolutely I will.
Potentially they can form the next government at any time, particularly with a minority parliament. So really what you're looking for, and the Conservatives lost this past election on the basis of sort of real social conservatism, weren't kind of with the times, quote unquote. And I think the social progressive element of the party has sort of taken a back seat. I think that will come back, and I think we'll see more of that reflecting the common values of most people right now. I don't think you can afford to live in the 1990s anymore if you want to get elected. And I just think that's the reality.
I've had enough of politics. The most recent election wasn't the result I wanted, so I probably won't follow it because it's a little ways away from having to really get back in action on campaigning against the Liberals. I mean, I'm a Conservative. I live in Alberta, and I think they do a good job. They should have built more pipelines when they were in power for 40 years, unfortunately. But yeah, I probably won't follow it really closely.
I'm not following it very closely. I'm a fan of the NDP, so I am not following the Conservative race too closely at all. However, I do hope they get somebody that's not too right-leaning, but other than that, yeah.
Conservatives, I mean, I don't disagree with everything that they're about, but I do disagree with a lot, and their current leaders are not that attractive as well, whether it be Scheer, Jason Kenney.
I will be paying attention to it in the sense that when news trickles onto my feeds, I will read it. But I will not expressly go out of my way to pay attention to it. How come? I guess because Alberta is going to vote Conservative no matter what, and it doesn't really matter. It's not us that decides the elections, so we're going to vote for whoever wins the Conservative race.
I will definitely be paying attention to the Conservative leadership race. I've never voted Conservative in the federal election, and I think this time I would have if the leader had been more suitable. So yeah, I think the Liberals made the same mistake with previous leaders. They had a run of unsuitable, unpopular, unlikable leaders. And then when Justin Trudeau came along, he's charismatic and likable, and obviously it worked for them. I think the Conservatives are making exactly the same mistake. They have chosen leaders that are just not suitable or likable. I was still considering voting Conservative until I found out that Andrew Scheer has an American citizenship. That was the final straw for me.
Probably, yeah, because it's one of the most important things to us, like immigrants. We kind of need to focus on what's going on with the immigration changes and everything. So, yeah, we'll have to pay close attention to that.
I will try my best because I am a student, so I am busy, but I will definitely try my best. I did vote for the elections recently, so I will definitely try my best to stay informed.
No, I won't be paying attention.
How come?
I just think that the way the election was run this last time federally, I don't think that it was honest. I think there were problems there, and I don't think that I'll be paying much attention.
Which Canadian Prime Minister helped establish the Order of Canada? Lester B. Pearson, John Diefenbaker, R.B. Bennett.
John Diefenbaker?
Lester B. Pearson.
R.B. Bennett.
John Diefenbaker?
John Diefenbaker.
I'll go with Pearson.
It's Pearson.
Wow.
You're right.
Okay.
High five. Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson helped establish the Order of Canada in 1967. The order was established to recognize Canadians who make a major difference to the country through their contributions. The motto of the order is Desiderantes Meliorum Patrium. They desire a better country. The order has 3 levels: member, officer, and companion. The Governor General serves as the Chancellor and principal companion of the order and administers the honors on behalf of the monarch. The highest level of the order, companion, can only have 165 living recipients at any given time. The divide between Western Canada and Ottawa has become increasingly apparent. Recently, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland met with Alberta Premier Jason Kenney. Freeland has been given the task of smoothing things out with Western Canada. But Kenney says Alberta has what he calls urgent priorities, which includes more autonomy from Ottawa. No Liberal MPs were elected in Alberta or Saskatchewan during the last federal election. Western Canadians have said many times over the years they feel ignored by Ottawa. And more recently, the Wexit movement has fueled sentiment to leave Canada altogether. So we took this question to you. How should the Prime Minister deal with the national unity concerns raised by some provinces?
I think we should be united. I know that there have been some issues in the West Coast with Alberta due to the election. I think Canada will be stronger by being all together because the threat that we face is much larger. And I mean, we need to help those who have issues, especially the provinces that have oil. So that's very important.
Well, he has to reach out to the West. There's no question. How he can do it, I don't know. I studied his cabinet. I don't know that has appeased the West and perhaps bringing more Westerners into his cabinet and into roles of importance. But he does have to reach out to them.
I think that Alberta is headed in not a good direction at this moment, and that we need to put our efforts into renewable resources as much as we can.
Well, that's pretty serious. I don't like, divisiveness within the country. I don't like that, provinces continue to threaten to leave Canada. I don't know how he should deal with it, but I think it's something he should take seriously.
I'm not really too sure there really is a concern, or if it's basically fringe parties or fringe provincial governments that are basically unsatisfied with the way the equalization and transfer payments have been done. So I'm not really too sure that there really is an issue.
Well, I think an open forum, lots of discussion, right across Canada, get the feedback of what the people really feel and think, and not just what's going on in Ottawa. So.
Yeah, he needs to listen. He needs to listen to the provinces. I mean, it's one thing when you have a majority government because you can do what you want because you have the majority. But now it's a minority government. If he's going to last any time in a minority government, he really does have to listen to the provinces.
Well, I think that would be capitulating to special needs. So out west wants their oil sold. Quebec wants their culture preserved. While each one has its own merits, that being the sole factor in dividing the country, I don't think is going to help anybody, as Quebec found out in the past when all the jobs left, when they were looking into separating. And I think the same effect would happen out west.
Well, I mean, we've got a minority government, so they're going to, it's not going to be a great few years. It was almost a wasted election for that reason. I think they just have to spend more time, the way you do with anything that's a minority. You have to spend more time, ask more questions, be present for the people that have less representation.
I think it's sad that as a country, a province needs to feel separate. I understand there's an identity in every region, but in the end, everyone's Canadian.
So I think one of the things is really just spend more time across the different provinces in the country and get to know what causes, what are the reasons for those issues, and kind of solve it one step at a time rather than I'm going to solve everything for the whole country at once, which just doesn't work.
I think everyone has to be treated separately because it's different in every province.
So obviously the issues and how they're dealt with are going to be different in every province. And I'll go back to what I said before. I find Ontario to be the sticky one with every little thing, whereas you sort of go into Saskatchewan, all those other provinces, and things are a little bit more easygoing. In Quebec especially too, it's a lot more, I don't know, a freer sense, So yeah, maybe it's just different for everybody, I guess. But I do like the feeling when I'm in Quebec or somewhere else.
It is a concern, but again, we should be very careful of kowtowing to threats from premiers of certain provinces, especially those who don't believe in climate change.
If there are provinces who don't want to be a part of the country or who don't want to agree to our policies, then, if they feel that they can do better on their own, then I agree that they should definitely try.
I really don't know. Going and listening, and really, really listening, I think is one of the best ways, but then what do you do with all that information that you have? And does he actually have the ability to make the really good decisions that have to be made? And how do you give up your power in order to be able to really listen to everybody? I don't have a clue.
Well, here we are in a new year and a new decade, and the trials many Canadians face will continue. From an opioid epidemic, poverty, and regional economies suffering, to our relationship with nations like China or the US, living in today's world is more challenging than ever. We posed this question to Canadians.
What are the biggest challenges facing Canadians in 2020?
2020, detaching from social media, making sure our kids grow up understanding relationships and how to connect with other people. I think that's huge. Wealth transfers between generations is going to be massive, and how we navigate that, the environment, of course, and tech intrusion into our lives. So there's a lot on our plates. I've got a university-age child coming up, and it's bizarre what they have to deal with. But you just sort of have to be mindful of what's happening and, kind of live in the world without getting absorbed by it.
Balancing the budget, obviously that's an ongoing problem. You can't carry, if we ran our households like the governments run our country, we'd be bankrupt. And that's the problem, is you can't keep running deficits and debt, carrying tons and tons of debt. So, I think our economy is in for a challenge. We're at the tail end of a 9-year bull run in the markets, and we've got some work to do economically for sure.
My biggest challenges hopefully I've overcome, and that's through praying and getting back to the ceremony personally. So that's my challenge, is to find my culture and to find who I am, and that's what I'm doing now. So once I get a little bit more, peace in my life, the challenges won't be challenges. They'll be actually hardships that will make me resilient and a better person.
Probably some of our biggest challenges will just come from our neighbors next door. So kind of seeing what they do and whether or not we can manage to do things like our oil pipeline and stuff like that. So just how well we get along with America will probably be our biggest challenge for the next year.
Care for elders may become more and more of a problem. I have 2 parents who, one is in that system right now, and one who went through that system who's died now. But you can see there's definitely some shortcomings there. Like, I believe very strongly that our healthcare should remain egalitarian. But I feel definitely it'll be a challenge to keep things.
As a student, I definitely do see the issue of how student loans are affecting the country, and how it's creating a lot of pressure and stress for graduates who are already under a lot of pressure and stress.
I think it's the employment. I think because of the economy is going down, people are losing their jobs. I think it's going to be employment, and how do we get these people working?
I'll jump in on that one too. I think it's employment, but I think we have to come to the realization it's not oil and gas, and I know that's not popular to say in Alberta, but we need green energy. We need to, do a lot of technological stuff with green energy, and we need to invent new jobs, so to say, and get people working in that field.
Indigenous issues is a huge topic, such as like the water crisis or housing issues. So,
climate change clearly is a major challenge. To repeat, I think poverty is a major challenge. I would say those are the two big things: poverty and inequality together, and climate change.
Climate change, inequality of wealth, poverty, racism, sexism.
I can think of a few. Right now we have the aging baby boomers, so we're getting more prevalence of dementia. We're getting more cancer disease. So we need more treatments, more doctors, more care facilities, more personal care homes for senior citizens. Another one is climate change. So we can see the Winnipeg weather right now. We know what's happening in Canada. We need to be mindful of what we're doing and how we can fix climate in Canada.
I feel like some are poverty because there's lots of people that struggle with that, but also like just getting employed and having a job that people are happy with.
Nobody wants to be without a job. I think there's been a big loss of jobs lately, and I think people are concerned about that, and increased costs of everything, whether it's a mortgage or every housing, rentals, everything is very expensive, and people just don't have the money they seemed to have before.
That's what I hear the most from people, is they're concerned that their dollars, everything's going up, gas is going up, food is going up, rent is going up, housing is going up, but my wages aren't going up. Everything is frozen. And I think that's a concern, is to be able to provide for our families.
You know, the one that concerns me most, one that really doesn't touch me, but I think this opioid and meth crisis is really concerning. There's people dying in swaths. I think that's at least one that could be addressed.
Thanks for watching this episode of Outburst on the Cable Public Affairs channel. I'm Glenn McGuinness. If you have any comments or questions about this show or any other show, you can find us on social media. You can also find us on our website at www.cpac.ca. It's your turn to speak up, and we're listening.